Sometimes we just react to things and it's not necessarily helpful. Today at Live on Purpose TV, how not to react when your child is gay. In an earlier video, I introduced you to Becky Mackintosh, a good friend of mine. You can link to that video right up here, where we talked about some similar topics. Becky is a speaker and she's an author, and she has reasons to know how not to talk to your child who just came out of the closet. Becky, you shared a little bit of your story in that previous video where your 24-year-old son revealed to you that he was gay. This was after months, probably years, of his own thinking about this and trying to deal with it all by himself and agonizing over how am I going to bring mom and dad in the loop, if ever. Yeah. And he may have thought at times, no, I'm taking this to my grave. There's no way I could ever tell my parents. There's some helpful ways to react and there's some less helpful ways to react, right? Right. So what have you learned about that? What can you inform us about that would be helpful there?
I made lots of mistakes.
Oh, good. So then we don't have to make the same mistakes.
Right. When he came out to me and he said, Mom, you're the first person I talked to about this. My words were, I love you. But then...
Beautiful. And you never regretted that.
I never regretted that, no. But then I added buts.
Take a note of that.
And that's what we need to stop doing, is adding buts. I love you, but what are we going to do to fix this? And one of the things I said, which now we laugh about, I said a lot of hurtful and funny things that weren't meant to be hurtful or funny.
No, you're just reacting, as a mom who has no experience with this.
Exactly, but all of a sudden I became an expert of what I thought.
Oh, yeah, because you know what to do.
Exactly. I hadn't researched, I hadn't ever talked about this, but for some reason I knew. And one of the things that I said that was we laugh about now.
You know, can I just interrupt you long enough to say, this is funny. Funny because we all do this. Somehow we have this destructive pride, is what I call it, that kicks into our mind, and somehow we know exactly what needs to happen next, and we're willing to share that advice with anyone who doesn't want to hear it.
Yeah, well, this was how ignorant I was. I said, well, let's get you into the doctor and get you on some testosterone. Your testosterone levels must be out of whack, and that's why you don't like girls, so let's get those leveled out. And he said, Mom, it is not testosterone. I had so much to learn about this, but I was
you were grasping.
I was,
yeah.
And my world had been shaken.
Right.
Another thing is, I thought this, and I also hear this a lot from parents, is wondering, well, they're taking the blame. Like, what did I say?
The parents taking
the blame of, I must have caused this. Like, what did I say or not say? What did I do or not do that created this?
What did we do wrong?
What did we do wrong?
Coulda, woulda, shoulda, done this or that. Wow.
And there is no one to blame.
It's not a blame thing.
It's not. No.
How long did it take you to realize that?
It took some time.
But it's a natural place for the mind to go.
It's a natural place. Yes, the blaming, the grieving, yes.
So parents, as you notice this in your own thinking, you're not alone. This is something that comes up very frequently with this kind of a reveal, and it's not that kind of a thing. There is no one to blame. So I think we set that aside, right? I mean, let's stop looking for whose fault is this or who's to blame. That doesn't help. It doesn't get us anywhere.
No. It put me on a quest to understand. And where I learned the most was actually listening to my son. Like when he talked to me about this,
who'd have thunk?
Listening to him. But I also was very helpful in reaching out to other parents that I knew who was on the same journey that had found peace.
Right. And
learning from them and reading books or whatever resources that I could find, and some were good and some were not so good. But
you're creating some yourself.
Yes.
About your experience and resources to help.
Yeah.
Parents want to share what they've learned. And there's a whole community out there of people who have already been through this. And like you were saying, Becky, already tried some stuff, some of which didn't work very well. Yeah. So we can avoid some of those pitfalls and what not to say.
In fact, our family, we have a video, it's called The Mackintosh Story. And it shows the real pain and the struggles that my husband and I went through.
Right.
And the patience of our son, and the dialogue that we had with each other to be able to work through that and actually come to a place of peace and love and support within our whole family. We have a large family. We have 7 children, 12 grandchildren.
Wow. Yeah. So Becky, we're going to get past the blame. We're going to monitor our own response as a parent. And realize that we're reacting in ways that are probably natural, not always helpful. We're going to connect with other parents. Another thing that you and I have talked about before is to drop the why. You know, this question, why is this happening? What's been your experience with that?
Drop the why. Drop stopping to try to figure out the cause or the cure, because there is none.
You know what? This has been a big issue, and not just for families, but for our society, for different cultures throughout the world. They want to figure out, why does this happen? And you'll hear these arguments all the time. Well, it's nature, it's nurture, it's learning, it's choice, it's whatever. And there's a lot of theories out there.
Yes.
There's a reason why there's so many theories. And what it comes down to is,
we don't know.
We don't know. So, we don't. There's factors that we can understand and address and look at. But the bottom line, folks, we really don't know. Yeah. So asking why is this happening is probably not the most
it's not productive.
helpful question.
The most helpful question is, how can I best help you? How can I be the best parent? And focusing on the now and your future together. That you want to have a close relationship. So focusing on the reality that this is real, this is happening, not bury it and sweep it under the rug and not talk about it.
Pretend like it'll go away.
Exactly. But to accept the reality and then seek to how can we move forward and be the best family and have the best relationship that we can have together.
Which has nothing to do with your child being gay.
Exactly.
Really? I mean, It could be anything, right?
Yep.
I love that focus, Becky, where we're going back to, how do we build from here? Where can we go from here? Given the context and what it is, let's see what we can do with this.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. There's no room for lecturing, preaching, shaming, blaming. Those serve no productive purpose whatsoever.
I was going to say those don't get us anywhere, but they actually do get us somewhere.
Yeah,
it's
the wrong direction.
Probably not where you want to go.
No, it adds to depression, anxiety, substance abuse, alcohol abuse, unhealthy behavior.
Well, even suicide.
Suicide attempts.
Yeah.
Yes.
I thought about that the same moment that you did, because this has become almost an epidemic. In fact, in the state where we live, it's now become like the 5th leading cause of death. And I think it's first for teens and young adults.
Suicide, absolutely. And that's one suicide death is too much.
Oh, yeah.
So the unproductive way to respond, it's not helpful. It could potentially lead to a terrible outcome.
Right. So why would our approach to it as a parent lead someone into a dark place like suicidal thinking, for example? You know, Becky, I was just thinking from a psychological standpoint. These kids of ours have already grappled with this. Take, for example, like your family. I know that your family has some very traditional, more conservative religious beliefs. And that's not bad. That's not something, you shouldn't just erase or delete your beliefs. But the tendency sometimes is to jump back into the preaching mode, or like you were pointing out earlier, you become the expert, and so you're going to give them the prescription for how they can fix this, right? Somehow you have all this brilliance just occur to you. And the effect that has is one of putting them in a position where I'm not accepted. There's something wrong with me and I'm going to have to fix it, which I've already tried to do for a dozen years and it hasn't worked, so I'm in a hopeless position.
Yep.
The number one prediction or predictor for suicide is hopelessness. Mm-hmm. And so going back to something that they've already thought through, sometimes for years, reinforces that feeling of hopelessness. Like, well, there's nothing I could ever do to fit in, to be accepted, to fix this, and therefore I'm in a hopeless position. And so the psychology behind that leads to the hopelessness. Have you seen this with families that you've worked with?
Oh, absolutely. And my son, when I preached and lectured and gave him all the reasons to not act upon his same-sex attraction, he said, Mom, that's not helpful. That makes me want to just take my life. If I have to just endure this life and it's going to be better when I leave this life, then why would I want to stay here?
Let me out now.
Let me out now. When they don't see, like you said, a hope or a bright future,
right,
then what do they have to live for?
Yes. So Becky, as we're talking about other strategies that we might want to use and others that we can avoid, when this first comes up for a parent, it's usually brand new, it's usually a shock, it's usually something that you never wanted to hear, right, from your child. And so we have all of these precursors that set us up for negative kinds of reactions. And we've already built up some expectations and predictions of what our child's life is supposed to be like.
Right.
You know, how we would script it if we were in charge. And we're not, by the way, but so everything has changed. You have shared with me before that it's not helpful to make assumptions about what's going to happen now. Because the fact that they've told you that they're gay does not mean that it's going to play out the way you think it will in your own mind.
Right.
So what would you suggest to us as parents?
Yeah, I think it is helpful to ask them, your child, so what are your plans? How do you envision your future?
Becky, you've said this a couple of times now. Ask them!
They know.
Get out of your own prideful way as a parent and just connect with your child on this, because they've been doing some thinking. They might respond with, well, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Because they
What if we were to respond with, well, sweetie, you're really bright, and I know with the right kind of support and love, you'll come up with something. So you don't have to jump in and fix it as a parent. Love them and support them. Get away from the assumptions that are driving your own thinking.
Yeah, it's important to assure them that they have a bright future ahead of them, that they have gifts and talents that they will bless the lives of others, and to give them that hope that they can live a very fulfilling, bright life. And none of us know exactly what is ahead of us.
Yes. Becky, I think the hope you're helping to create is that you're an example for us as parents of, yes, you can hear this from your child. Yes, this can be part of your greater package, and you can still experience joy in that bright future that we're talking about. Because it's not just for our kids, it's for us too.
Yeah.
And that I think is the hope that you're bringing to this conversation. You as a parent might be despairing and thinking, oh no, this is ruining everything. Let's put that aside long enough to see that, you know what? You not only can handle this, but you have the potential for a very bright future as well. Becky, can you even imagine, you know, if you were to rewind to before all this happened, could you even imagine the people that you've met and the places you've been and the experiences you've had and all that you've learned?
I would never go back and erase our journey. No. My son, having an LGBT child, has helped me learn and grow in ways that I never thought possible. And I've met some incredible, incredible people that I would have never met in any other way.
Thank you for being such a conscious parent You probably know someone else who needs this video, and you know what to do.